All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are to our final document, which is our thank yous. So this is going to require some role playing because it's a thank you for an interview, which we're not going to have. But I'm going to ask you to be creative and imagine what an interview could have been like, and then write a follow up thank you to it. Before we get to that, though, let's talk a little bit about interviewing. So, some interview tips, the things to bring and prepare. So, first of all, whenever you go into an interview, you need to research two key pieces of information about the company that you might be interested in talking about. You should check the company's LinkedIn and also look at people who work at the company. If possible, you should even research the interviewer. This will help you come in and be really situated and know the context of the company, so you'll feel confident in speaking about it and you'll have plenty to say whenever questions arise. You should create a T chart of the key hard and soft skills from the job ad on one side and your key examples or stories that you can tell when they ask on the other. So you're telling why you're qualified. Think of these kind of as a case study. So we talked about creating a T chart when we talked about both the resumes and the cover letters. This is something that you should have prepared before you walk in. So what kind of skills are they looking for? And then what kind of examples do you have that demonstrate that you have those skills? It's good to have those prepared so you'll have those to bring up. Those are likely going to be questions. You should bring several resumes, a nice looking pen and notepad. So don't just bring your Bic or your, free click pen that you got at a job fair. Bring something that looks professional. And you should bring examples of your work, if applicable, or a performance evaluation. So something that shows what you've actually done or demonstrates that, what kind of worker you have been and what kind of work you've produced. The several resumes are because likely you're going to have several people interviewing you, and you want to be sure that everybody has a resume. You also need to be sure to take notes during and after, especially of something interesting that you talked about that could be useful in a thank you letter. Taking notes also demonstrates to the interviewers that you are paying attention and you're serious about what you're doing. So some interview tips as far as questions. These are common questions that you should always be prepared for. So there's the tell us something about yourself. You should tell them about your prior experiences in you language. Remember, we talked about you language and cover letters. Everything that you say should be spun towards how it's going to be beneficial for the company. You should illustrate a skill. If you add something that you actually enjoy doing beyond hard experience, you should try to make it a fun thing that illustrates some soft skill. I love rock climbing. It's all about problem solving versus I like TV. So even as you're kind of weaving in some personal things about yourself, you should demonstrate how those actually make you a good applicant. Another question is, why do you want to work for us? For this question, you should describe what you've researched about the company and how that fits into your career goals and ethos. Again, make it you focused, make it user focused, make it reader focused. It's not focused on you as the speaker, it's focused on the person who's interviewing you and the company. So when you describe why you want to work for them, pull out that research that you've done. This shows them that you know about the company, you're serious about the job, and that you also know that you have the skills that are needed. They're going to ask you why you're qualified. You want to be sure in this instance that you use, both those hard and soft skills, that T chart that you've created. That's when you'll resort back to that, to not just provide those skills, but you're going to provide stories and examples to demonstrate those skills. A question, what could you offer us that other candidates cannot? In addition to these things, you ask for your job ad. I have experience doing da da da. So you kind of think of the other experiences that you have, things that may not be in your resume that also can be transferred into that position. You'll be asked, what is your greatest strength? This should be something that, again, is speaking back to the job call, to the position that you're going into. Don't just pick a random greatest strength. Pick a greatest strength that speaks to the position that you're applying for. What is your greatest weakness? This is always a fun one. It's that I'm just too goal oriented, right? We're going to avoid that. But it should be one that you have solved or are actively solving. So you don't want to say that I just don't like working that hard, right? You don't want it to be a point to brag or that's really obvious, but you don't want it to be an ongoing issue or one that makes you look like an unworthy candidate. So think about your greatest weakness, but also demonstrate how you solved it or how you are in the process of solving it. Tell us a time when you solved a problem or conflict in your work. This will always be asked, and you should prepare an example of showing leadership, moving yourself or a team through something difficult. And then what are your career goals? You want to state what you would like to accomplish for that company in particular and talk about where the field is going. So don't stray off and make it seem that that company or that position is a stepping stone. You want to align your career goals with that company and also talk about where that company is going and how you would like to grow with it. So questions that you would ask. You should always ask questions. Have questions ready to ask. You should never say no when they say, do you have any questions? When appropriate, try to ask a question or two in other areas of the interview to create kind of a conversation. You can do a reverse interview on your interviewers. So what are you excited about in the company? What big projects are next? What kind of projects would I tackle first? How can I help your company meet its goals? And ask follow-up questions. So as you're doing this, you're showing them that you've really thought about the company and you're really interested in it and you're interested in what they have to say about it as well. Also, smart questions are just as critical as smart answers most of the time. You should have a company-specific question for each interview where you're specifically asking a question that comes from the research that you've done. This is going to demonstrate, again, that you've done your homework and that you're really vested in this company. Yes, is there support for continuing education so that you can stay on top of changes? This is one, giving you the information that you need, and two, showing that you always want to grow and that you want to grow in the company and advance the field. You should ask the start date and you should ask the next step in the hiring process. Etiquette. We all probably know this, but as a teacher, I'm always baffled that some of the first one is ignored. But turn off your cell phone. The last thing you want in the middle of an interview is for your personalized ringer to go off. You should dress up. You should look nice, dress professionally. You should shake hands coming in and going out and state your name as you're doing this. So you're kind of letting them know who you are both times. Don't ever interrupt questions. Wait for interviewers to finish their questions. Don't say negative things. Again, we've talked about this in both cover letters and resumes. Don't say anything negative about yourself. Don't highlight your shortcomings. Also, do not say something negative about a previous job. Often, people will ask, what made you leave your previous job? You need to think about that and make sure that you aren't kind of doing a bash fest on your previous job. That demonstrates to them what kind of employee you are. And also, often when a former employee has a negative view, employers might take it as that the employee wasn't doing their job and so had a negative view of it. So just be sure that you're not bashing your previous jobs. Make eye contact, take notes, and thank them for their time. And always state their name if you can. So I want you to think about advice that you've been given and whether or not it aligns with this, what you've heard before, and even the experiences that you've had. You don't have to do homework. It's just a little pause to think about it. Now, finally, this is going to be one of your assignments, the thank yous. You're going to thank the interviewer within 2 days via email. You'll thank them for the interview. You'll ask them what the next steps are. You'll tell them that you are still interested. You want to remind them of one interesting thing that you talked about specific to your interview. So you're going to remind them who you are and why you're qualified. And you're going to be sure to state that you're excited about the opportunity that they're offering, that this seems like an exciting time for the business and the role is a great fit for the skill set that you have. And be sure that you say, if you need any additional documents or information from me, please let me know. You do not want to pressure them. You do not want to say, please respond. You do not want to ask, when are you going to respond to me? The thank you is to remind them who you are and to show who you are and to thank them for their time. Follow up again if you get a timeline for the interview process near the end of the timeline after they've passed the next stage. So you'll do a second follow up if you know the timeline after they've gone into the next stage. But do remember not to pressure. The last thing that you want to do is to come off as a little bit too pushy before you've even gotten your foot in the door. So your homework is to write a mock thank you letter to be included in your application packet. The letter should respond to a mock interview. So if you can, I'd like you to find to the job ad the person that you would actually be interviewing with so you can address them. If not, make up the name. But I'd really like you to demonstrate that you've done some research on the company and you know who that is. And it will be, of course, a mock interview. So some of the pieces that I just listed, you'll have to kind of make up, but you should use your cover letter and the job itself to imagine what those instances could be and the kind of examples that you would use. If you have any questions, please post them in the discussion board or let me know through email, or we can schedule a phone call and have fun.